Hey guys, in this lesson we're going to go over wall stacking construction versus single stacking construction. Now, normally I like to use this type of construction on the exterior walls, and you'll see why we might do that. So what I'm going to do now is from the Architecture tab, I'll open the Wall menu and select Wall Architectural. And as you know, once it loads in under Properties, you can click that drop arrow and see a bunch of different types of walls. So we have here a brick on CMU, we have a 6-inch generic wall, we have interior walls and retaining concrete walls. Now all of these are separate, individual, simple construction walls, but what we're going to go into today are stacked walls. So instead of a basic wall system, if you scroll to the bottom of this list, you'll see stacked wall. The stacked wall system is pretty easy to understand, but it's actually composed of your different basic walls. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to select Stacked Wall, and then under the Properties window, I'll select Edit Type. When I click on Edit Structure, I can see two different types of walls. And you can see these in preview as well. There's the exterior brick on metal stud, and then there's the exterior CMU on metal stud. You'll also see different properties, heights, offsets, that you can set to these different layers. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and insert another layer. It'll load in as another CMU on metal stud, but what I'm actually going to do is click into the name and change it to a retaining concrete wall. Now this retaining wall is only 12 inches thick, which as you can see is much thinner than the rest of the wall, so I'm going to want to go in and change that. So I'll hit OK and go make that change. So back under Properties, I will select our 12-inch retaining wall, click on Edit Type, and now we'll change its properties. I'll click on Edit Structure, and instead of 1 foot, I'll change its thickness to 2 feet. But first what I need to do is duplicate this wall, because if I make this change here, it'll change it everywhere that I've used this specific wall type. So now I can go back in and change the thickness to 2 feet. Now I'm aware that this is extremely thick for a wall. This is just a broad example to show you how to introduce wall stacking into your repertoire of Revit skills. So now we'll go back and select the stacked wall, we'll go into Edit Type, we'll then select Edit Structure, and we will replace our 12-inch concrete wall with our 24-inch concrete wall. So the underlying principle of stacked walls is just combining walls that already exist to create a flexible amalgam wall. So I've moved the concrete wall down to create a sort of foundation, and you can see there's a ledge which we can get rid of using offsets. So if I set its offset to 6 inches and click off, you'll see it slides the concrete portion over 6 inches. And if you make the offset negative, it'll actually move it in the other direction. So remember, the offset actually defines how exactly all the components of your stacked wall line up. I'm also going to add a parapet height. I'll insert a wall, move it up to the top, and then I will select a generic 6-inch wall. So now we have all the different components of our stacked wall. We have our generic wall, currently 3 feet, which I'm going to change to 3 foot 6, and you can see that reflected in the preview. A variable height, which I'll discuss in a moment. 3 feet on the bottom, which you can see that right here. And then our retaining wall, which I'll actually make 6 feet. So now we're ready to hit OK. But remember, we have that variable height. Now what is that, and why do we need it? Why can't we just set all the heights? Well, if we hit OK and go back to our floor plan, we'll draw a single wall here on the west, and you'll see a notice pop up. The wall is shorter than the minimum height allowed by its type. It's 11 feet and must be at least 12 foot 6 inches. If you get that error, you can always just delete the element, and then go back into your Edit Type and look at the heights. We have 6 feet, 3 feet, and 3 feet 6 inches, which actually gets us up to the 12 feet 6 inches that the notice said is required. So what I'm actually going to do is change the stacked wall to 15 feet. We've got our base offset at 0, 0. We're going to set the top constraint to unconnected, and then make the unconnected height 15. Now when we draw the wall, it doesn't report any problems. So let's go into our 3D view to see what happened. We'll orbit around over to where the wall is. Press Shift W to get your wheel if you need it. Oh, and it actually looks like I built this on a different phase. I apologize. So let's go back to the floor plan. We'll change our phase to existing, and then we will go back to our 3D view. And there it is. So you can see now our stacked wall system in its entirety. What's interesting about stacked walls is that they're considered a single object. As I mentioned, this is great for exterior walls, because if we look at this 6-foot concrete section, if we set its height to -6 feet, then it could be part of the foundation. It'll go into the ground and you can put a footing along it. Now the brick in the second layer up might be nice for an exterior wall. The red brick above that might go all the way up to the top. And then above that we have the parapet. The reason that we have a variable then, if you haven't already guessed, is because if we change the height to 20 feet, then that middle brick section will make up the difference, while the other 3 parts stay at what we defined. If we set it to 25 feet, then the middle section will continue to grow. So that variable component gives you flexibility. If you go back to the Edit Structure section of the stacked wall type, that variable type is what will change when you adjust the height of a wall in your active model, and it will be assigned to one of the elements of your stacked wall. If you want to make another element of your stacked wall variable, all you have to do is click on that element, and then click the variable button below it. And you can keep switching them out as you need. The only 2 rules are that you must always have one variable element to your stacked wall, and the rest must have defined heights. So that's an introduction in how to create and manipulate stacked walls. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next lesson.